Now, let us understand the VCF release model and versioning logic in detail because this is one of the most important concept in VMware Cloud Foundation administration and lifecycle management. In VMware Cloud Foundation ecosystem, every release follows a structured versioning hierarchy. The version format is generally, represented as X, Y, Z, and P. So here X represents the major release version, then Y represents the minor release version, and Z represents the maintenance release version, and P represents the patch version. Now let us understand each one in detail in the upcoming slides. So first let us discuss the major release. A major release represents a major platform generation change inside VMware Cloud Foundation. This is where VMware introduces architectural transformation, major design changes, then additional features, and it's going to add some improvements across the platform. We can take the example from moving from VCF 4.x to 5.x, then moving from VCF 5.x to 9.x. That is considered a major release transition. This type of release often introduces a completely new generation of SDDC manager functionality, major NSX architecture updates, then lifecycle management enhancements, then security framework improvements, and also its support for newer hardware platforms and software integrations. In most cases, major release also involve changes in the bill of materials, which is commonly called the BOM. Now, this BOM concept is extremely important in VCF because VCF is not a single product. It is a fully validated software stack made up of multiple integrated components such as vCenter server, ESXi, NSX, vSAN, SDDC manager, and other dependent services. So every VCF release has its own validated bill of materials. For example, in this image, if we take VCF 5.2, VMware defines exactly which version of ESXi, vCenter, NSX, and vSAN are officially supported together. This means administrators can, administrators cannot randomly upgrade. Instead, they can follow the structured approach in terms of upgrading from one version to another version. For example, we cannot simply download the latest vCenter version and apply to directly into the VCF environment unless that version is part of the supported bill of materials or supported through an approved asynchronous patching mechanism. This is because SDDC manager in 5.x orchestrates the entire platform lifecycle based on bill of material validation and compatibility checks. But in 9.x, instead of SDDC manager, the complete validation is taken care by VCF operations user interface. Now, let's explore that next option in that updates lifecycle. So next comes the minor release. So we in the previous slide we discussed about the major release, right? That is, we took the example of 4.x to 5.x and all. We took the example 5.x to 9.x also is an example. So from VCF release perspective, we need to understand what is this minor release. Minor release mainly focus on introducing new features and enhancements within the major generation. For example, moving from VCF 9.0 to 9.1 is considered a minor release. Here, VMware introduced additional automation capabilities, operational improvements, then expanded hardware support, then new ESXi integration, then enhanced features or lifecycle management improvements, but still maintaining the same platform generation. So minor releases are generally handled through scheduled lifecycle management operations using SDDC manager. Okay, so here I attached a screenshot for your reference, which is for the minor release. This I prepared for 5.x. Okay, anyway, I'm just recalling that slide uh, for VCF 9 training. So here for minor release, I given an example of VCF 5.1 to VCF 5.2. The same thing if you take for VCF 9, we can say VCF 9.0 to VCF 9.1. That is considered as a minor release. Now, let us move to the maintenance release in the next slide. So the third option is maintenance release. Maintenance release are mainly stability focused updates. For example, let's take an example of VCF 5.x. Okay. Here in the screenshot you can see VCF 5.1.1 is considered a maintenance release. This release usually contain the cumulative bug fixes, then operational corrections, then performance improvements, compatibility enhancements, and security rollups. The primary goal of maintenance release is not to introduce major new functionality, but to improve the reliability, supportability, and operation stability of the environment. VMware is releasing this maintenance release. So from production perspective, maintenance release are extremely important because they consolidate multiple fixes into a validated cumulative update package. Okay, so here you can see 5.1 VCF 5.1.1. The same way now VCF 9.0 has been released in the year of 2025 June, right? After that they released an maintenance release, right? That is VCF 9.0.1. That is considered as a maintenance release. Okay, now let's move to that patch updates. So we already discussed about the VCF releases from major, minor maintenance. Now let us focus on the final one, patch release. Patch release are the smallest level of VCF updates. For example, let me share a screenshot. Okay, so instead of sharing a screenshot, let me explain this. Anyway, in the next slide I'll summarize all this screenshot together. For example, VCF 5.1.1.1 is a patch release. Similar to that, 9.0.1.0 are considered as a patch release. This release are generally targeted toward fixing critical issues, or else if there is an urgent bug which needs to be fixed, or is there any security vulnerabilities which needs to be fixed as soon as possible. Those things comes under the patch updates. So a patch release is going to address a specific VMware security advisory, commonly called VMSA. So people who is already working on VMware platform, they might aware of this VMSA. The main purpose is to resolve a high priority production issue identified after the main release. Now an important modern concept in VCF is asynchronous patching, also called async patching. So normally administrators have to wait for a complete VCF release cycle before updating components, but today VMware supports async patch mechanism. For example, if a critical security vulnerability affects vCenter server, VMware may release an async patch specifically for vCenter without waiting for the next complete VCF maintenance or minor release. Using the Async Patch tool, administrators can update an individual component to a newer supported version, even if that version is temporarily outside the original bill of materials. This allows customers to quickly remediate critical security vulnerabilities while still remaining with the supported operational state. However, this async patching introduces another important concept called configuration drift. So configuration drift means environment no longer exactly matches the original validated BOM because one or more components were updated independently using this patch updates. For example, suppose the original VCF BOM includes vCenter version A, and if we apply async patch and move into vCenter version B, then the environment has drifted, right? There is a change from the original bill of material alignment. Later, when VMware releases a new maintenance or minor release, that release often acts as a roll-up update. So a roll-up update is going to reconcile the environment back into a standardized bill of materials alignment by officially integrating those individual patches into a newly validated release stack. So essentially, maintenance and minor release are not only provide enhancement and fixes, but they also help normalize environments that experience async patch drift. That is the configuration drift. Okay. In the next slide, now let us try to summarize all four release types clearly in the next slide, and we'll conclude. Now finally, let us summarize the complete VCF release lifecycle model. Here I took the example of VCF 5.x, okay, because VCF 5.x is the complete reference model which has major release, minor release, maintenance release, patch release. I cannot take VCF 9 as an example because VCF 9, just got the maintenance release and the major release. We are waiting for the minor release and patch updates and all. So that's the reason I took the example of VCF 5.x, to explain the major, minor, maintenance, and patch release. So VMware Cloud Foundation follows a structured versioning hierarchy which consists of major release, minor release, maintenance release, and patch release. I already explained major release, right? Major release represents new platform generation and architectural transformation. We already discussed the example from VCF 4.x to 5.x or from VCF 5.x to 9.x. All this comes under the major release category. This major release introduced an important changes, okay, and new platform features, then improvements, security frameworks, and the bill of materials which is going to change across the complete VCF stack. If you compare the bill of materials for 4.x to 5.x, it is completely different. The same way, if you compare the bill of materials for VCF 5.x to 9.x, it's a different one. Okay. Then next to major, we have a minor release, right? So minor release focus on the features within the same platform generation. So here you can see VCF 5.1 to VCF 5.2. So if you take 9, we can say VCF 9.0 to VCF 9.1. Okay. This minor release introduce new features, automation, improvements. Then it's going to provide expanded hardware support, then NSX enhancements and lifecycle improvements. But it's going to maintain the same core architecture because you can see the number here 5.1 or 5.2, 9.0 or 9.1. The architecture is going to remain the same. There won't be any major shift in architecture, right? Like we saw in 5.x to 9.x. So maintenance release are stability focused updates. They provide cumulative bug, operational corrections. Okay, when I say bug, I'm saying about the bug fixes. Okay. So and also it's going to provide the performance enhancements and the security rollups to improve the reliability of the environment. Then next is about the patch release. Patch release are targeted with the corrective updates. This release are mainly designed to address critical bugs or any urgent production issues. When I say urgent production issues, we can take the example of security vulnerabilities. You might have seen VMware is releasing the security vulnerabilities in that VMSA, right? Okay. So now one of the most important concept to remember here is that VCF is not a single standalone product. VCF is a fully validated software stack made up of components like ESXi, vCenter, NSX, vSAN, SDDC manager, and other supporting services. So every VCF release includes a validated bill of materials, commonly called the BOM. The BOM is going to define the exact supported version of all integrated VMware components. Say, from the release type perspective, before you are working on the upgrade, update, or patch, you should have a clear understanding about this release options, because as part of the production support, you can work in the major release. Suppose if you are upgrading from 5.x to 9.x, you will get the opportunity to work in the minor release. Anyway, for those people who is working in VCF 9.0, they are going to work on the minor release by this month or by next month, because as of now it is VCF 9.0. Next it's going to be VCF 9.1. Then maintenance release. If it is 9.0 and if they are releasing 9.0.1 or 9.0.2, that is going to be a maintenance release. And patch release. Okay, patch release, they can release an important urgent vulnerability kind of stuff to update any single component or multiple components. Those things comes under the patch release category. So from operations perspective, if you are working on upgrade, update, or installing patches, then you should be familiar with this release options. Okay, that is the objective of this training, like to make aware like what are the release types and lifecycle options available. Okay, in the next session, let's discuss about how we are going to update and do the release, sorry, not minor, the maintenance release update from VCF 9.0 to 9.0.1 and from 9.0.1 to 9.0.2. Let's try to explore that as a demo in the upcoming session.